Case here, and today I'm going to show you guys some of the loadouts I use with my rucksack. Now I say it that way because I have a couple different rucksacks here. I'll explain why I have two, and sometimes the packing list varies for certain situations, so there's going to be some variation here throughout this video. First and foremost, D13 Airsoft is primarily a Airsoft channel, though we will do other content. With that said, though we hope you learn something from this outside of the world of Airsoft, if you're taking your tactical advice from an Airsoft channel and only an Airsoft channel, you should probably reevaluate your life choices. In addition, this is part of our annual video series, so I'm filming this quite late. However, I'm going to be including this as part of our 2024 line of annual videos, though this will be the first in this series for this one, which is the rucksack review portion of it. Later in 2025, I will do one for 2025, which will be, again, the rucksack review and show some of the changes I made since this video. Ideally, it's supposed to be each year. Again, I'm running behind schedule, so just go with it. Okay, so going into the view, because this is the first video in the series, there's actually a lot of things that's happened with me in these rucksacks that have not been seen on the channel before. So first, I want to start out with kind of the development of me getting here. And then we'll go and say philosophy of use. Now, I first started really doing this stuff on the side when I was up in Alaska for a couple of years. While up there, I started developing a different philosophy to tactical gear just due to the extreme cold you had to deal with it, the difficulty in sustainment, and just trying to do different things I wouldn't have normally done. For example, on the LBE or load bearing equipment review, you get to see a lot of the belt kit I've been developing on the tactical gear side. And that really also started up in Alaska. Now, one thing I also started to do was looking on the rucksack side, because when you're up there in the extreme cold, you needed a lot of stuff you may not normally need, including like the near mandatory of some sort of sleeping system. And if I was packing alone, that meant I had to have something. No, I did not have a full 4-season like Arctic tent, but I did have like what they were called 3.5-season tents, where they're very good quality from most seasons, and they're better than nothing in the extreme cold temperatures. But that was bulky, and that was like 7-8 pounds extra that I had in my rucksack. Of course, all the layers of cold weather gear, both on your body and the spares inside the rucksack. Also, additional food, because when you're carrying that much weight, you're expending additional calories even in the cold. Some additional water to a certain extent, at least a couple of liters that won't get frozen on you. In addition, was a lot of specific food for that environment, so certain ready-to-eat meals that you would often bring for camping food would actually freeze unless it was very close to your body. So having a jet boil or something to heat up was very common. Some of that stuff was actually lighter, like the freeze-dried stuff, but the jet boil system of stuff kind of counteracted that weight, as that's additional weight you had to carry that you wanted in warmer temperatures. So things like that I had to carry more in that environment. Because of that, I needed a larger rucksack. So I obviously was well familiar with the Alice rucksack system, which you see here, and actually I didn't use that at first because I couldn't fit all this equipment in even the large Alice rucksack. I know there's Malice rucksacks and some modified Alice rucksacks that can carry additional gear, but with the sleeping system, the tent system, the extra cold weather gear, all of that was just way too bulky to pack in there. So largely what I did, I started with a civilian hiking pack I've had for a couple of years. It kind of held the weight in terms of the capacity, but it really couldn't handle the durability side, especially in those extreme temperatures. When I would cinch it down, the straps just didn't feel sturdy enough. So I moved away from that to the U.S. Army issued Molly 2 rucksack. Those plastic frames and those rucksack systems I know are not particularly beloved. Especially in comparison to the days of the older Alice system. But they're still standard in the military, and when I was up there I can get them pretty cheap. I used that for a bit. Then I said, well, it is the Army issued rucksack Molly 2 system. Let's see what else is out there without breaking the bank. I actually found a decent price on a Russian rucksack that could carry a lot. It was like a 100-liter Russian rucksack. So I got that. It could definitely take the capacity. The problem was its design was very similar to that civilian hiking pack that I had, where it is a very narrow, tall design with a large kidney belt to carry most of the weight. in partnership with something like a belt kit for the tactical gear side. It worked really terribly. You wanted a more minimalistic kidney pad that I realized after using it. So then I went back to the Army issued Molly 2, which is really what sustained me for the remainder of my time up there. Because it was relatively inexpensive. You can get a lot of different aftermarket stuff for it because of the Molly webbing on it, or the PALS webbing, excuse me. I think with 4 sustainment pouches, it was like 100 something liter capacity. So it really was able to fill up a lot of that space very well. I didn't like the plastic frame on it, but overall I can make it work, and it worked quite well, even with the belt kit that I was using. Though the plastic frame was a little higher, so if I had a helmet on and I went prone, it'd be a little weird looking up. But outside of that, I mean, I made it work. Now, the reason I mention any of that is because that's my background going into this. Now, going out of Alaska back down to the south here in North Carolina, a lot of things have obviously changed, right? Though I still sometimes deal with some cold weather, it's nowhere close to that. It's nowhere for that level of length. And thus, I can move away from the Molly 2 rucksack and back to the venerated Alice rucksack, which I really like. It's a much more compact rucksack in comparison. I like the metal frame over the plastic frame more, both in terms of its sturdiness, but also it's a little more compact. It also doesn't make as much noise. If you ever use those plastic rucksacks, the straps, no matter how tight you get them on, there's always like this plastic creaking sound that, I don't know, my OCD got to me. I never feared of it, giving away your position or anything, but it was kind of loud in your next to your ear when you're rucking, kind of annoying. Also say the kidney strap on these Alice rucksacks are pretty minimalistic. Some guys like more padding, especially for the longer miles. As a civilian, I'm not really going, 20, 30 miles with all this gear on. So I'm okay with that more minimalistic kidney pad. And it works really well with my belt kit because this Alice rucksack system was meant to be used with the Alice belt kit system back in 1974. So it kind of worked out pretty well. So I just kept going back in time with these rucksacks so long as I had the capacity to fill them up. And down in North Carolina I was able to. So with all of that said, now let's get to the modern day, which is, what do I use these rucksacks for? Well, I'm down here in the south, and I use it as really a jack of all trades backpack, including the stuff I have in here. So I use this for camping trips, hiking trips. I use it to store tactical gear for certain events, such as an Airsoft game or a shooting competition. If it's an overnighter, I use it as a bug out bag. So sometimes it just stays in my car. So if something were to happen, I can grab it and go. Sometimes it stays out of the car, depending on where I am. I have 2 of them here, which I'll get to in a minute. I have the large Alice rucksack and the medium Alice rucksack. I use this with chest rigs. I use this with belt kit. I can ruck with it with the body armor setup I have, though I wouldn't recommend it. That's painful, but at least it's possible with this current setup I have. But in that very broad philosophy of use, these rucksacks and the packing list inside is a jack of all trades for those purposes. I will say, in terms of long-term sustainment, this is really meant for like a 2.5 day, 40-hour rucksack. I can make it a 3-day, specifically the small one. Larger one, I can definitely make it more, but not really more than that. I'm not trying to load this down with 100 pounds or anything nuts. So with that said, let's go through this. Now, as you see here, as I've already mentioned, you have 2 different rucksacks. I have the large Alice rucksack and the medium Alice rucksack. Now, fun fact, this large Alice rucksack came with the frame that's on this medium one. I just swapped the frame between the 2 depending on when I want to use them. The buckle on the frame says this was made in 1994. So doing the math on that, that means at least the frame and the large one is probably looking at close to 30 years old, older than even I am. The medium one, I suspect, isn't that much older either. So these are very old systems in terms of tactical gear and hiking packs in general. And yet, I think a theme you'll find with the Alice rucksacks, of which there are hundreds of videos on YouTube about these, is they are very good quality even as they continue to age out. They are very affordable, especially in a lot of surplus stores around the country. And even today, jumping ahead, I would say, yeah, even for a variety of uses, I would still recommend them. I mean, sure, you're probably not the first choice if you go into some sort of lightweight hiking competition or something, but most of you looking at videos like this aren't going to use them for something like that. They want something a little more durable, something with a little more capacity, a little more options, and something even as an old design as this can provide that at an affordable price. Though, as you will see, I have modified both of these slightly to help modernize them past their 30-year life cycle. So because this large Alice rucksack is empty, let's start with this one. Right now, it's currently off the frame. I have done a couple of different modifications to the standard support for it, though if you've never seen one before, which I don't know why you clicked on this video first, you have 3 main sustainment pouches on the outside at the bottom. The middle one is slightly larger than the one on the left or right. You have a triple magazine pouch up front that can fit two Stand Mag style 5.56 mags in them each. The tolerance is too tight on this rucksack to fit 2 Magpul 30-round magazines each. What you can do is fit 1 30-round Magpul mag and 1 Stand Mag, but again, not 2 Magpul mags. These are designed for Stand mags. We'll just keep it at that. Kind of a older issue with this. This is something that you could modify, as some people have, to make them more modernized. We also find there's a lot of space on the sides with the older Alice belt attachment system for other things. As for the inside, it's largely just a large sack minus a large radio pouch segment right here near the front and an admin sleeve underneath the cover of the pack. Now, as for some of the mods I've personally done to this with a non-industrial machine, you don't need to have a particularly big machine to do this, though it's definitely a lot easier. I have, starting at the top, I've added some Velcro and a name tape sewn onto the top in case I want to put stuff there. I have added modern buckles instead of the metal adjustment sliders for the main straps, and have added Velcro retaining tabs at the ends to help clean up some of the loose straps. I have it currently on the medium Alice pack, so when we get to there I'll show you, but I also have a admin sleeve zipper adapter. I did not make that, someone else made that, but I have one. Again, the female side of the buckle system for the main adjustment straps. For the sustainment pouches, I've also added modern buckles to them instead of the metal adjustment sliders and snaps. And then I've added 3 pyro pouches to the side, to the I guess the 3 and 9 o'clock, I guess we call it, and then the direct side here. These 2 are roughly the same size. I made these. They were my first attempts at something like this. They are alright. I am overall pretty happy with them. I'll get close-ups of those for you. They can fit, I think, 4 EG-67 airsoft grenades still in their box, which is fantastic if I was going to take these for an airsoft game, which we'll get to in a moment. And then on the side, it's a little thinner, but it is a longer form of a sustainment pouch that I have permanently sewn to the side. Now what that has done is given me a small space down here to still use the older Alice belt kit system if I wanted to attach something small and square down there, such as a 2-liter quart canteen if I wanted, for example, or a foldable e-tool. And then on this side, it's completely bare with a pull tab down here. Now we'll talk about this pull tab on the other one because I have the same exact system there. But that is for my e-tool because I do not use the standard USGI foldable e-tool. I use the Eastern Morse ComBlock European style e-tools, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now, why I have this even, when, as you can see, I've already had the medium rucksack filled up, and as you would guess, I am transitioning more to this now, is for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is winter time. Because though here in North Carolina the winters are nowhere as close as bad as they are in Alaska, nor are they as long. However, there are still some cases, especially if I'm up near the mountains, where I want to have good quality winter gear, particularly a very nice sleeping system, including the black. If you fall into 3 to 4 piece U.S. Army sleeping systems, the black and green sleeping bags, the baby cover, and the stuff sack are all great options, though they are quite bulky. And I will say sleeping systems absolutely kill up a lot of space in these rucksacks. And a medium rucksack like this just isn't for it. So this large one would be great for the winter times. And that's when, probably around the September, October time frame, I tend to switch to frames and change the packing list to accommodate that. Amongst some other cold weather gear that I'll explain when we go through this one. The other one would be Milson West Airsoft games. So most Airsoft games, if I'm going to bring a rucksack, it's really there to be left at your spawn. 99% of the packing list will be removed from this, and it's there to hold spare BBs, some water, maybe some snacks, and maybe some grenades. For Milson West games, you have to actually ruck out there, and you cannot return to your vehicle. And I'm going to another one in October, so I will be using this also for the cold weather gear. I'll need to ruck out there for that, but also for some of the spare stuff that I can't go back to my car for, specifically a lot of the pyro. So being able to pack all the grenades, smoke grenades you want, is definitely going to be needed. So that's something that this has over the medium Alice rucksack that, at least for winter time, I just can't pack everything in here that I would want. At least not right now. So is what it is with that. That's why I still keep the large one, which is perfectly fine. Okay, let's open up the medium Alice rucksack. Now my weight varies between summer and winter, usually between 34 and 39 pounds. That's the total weight you will see varying between the seasons. Now, normal kidney waist strap for the Alice rucksack. I personally, for the relatively fewer miles I am carrying this in comparison to others, I'm perfectly okay with it. It's very minimalistic, it's simple, it's thin, easy to utilize with belt kit. Here's the original buckle with it still going strong. Again, this was made around 30 years ago according to that buckle. Now, I was using the original Alice straps for quite a while, however, unfortunately it did eventually break on me. For those original Alice suspender straps on here, you notice the quick detach portion on there tends to be pretty weak because essentially it's two plastic components with a emergency snap to retain it. Pretty easy to bust in the grand scheme of things, especially after 30 years. Eventually the snap got stripped, so I went to eBay and just found this American-made, a little more modern Alice shoulder straps. Pretty good, pretty decent padding. I can partially Velcro them off for whatever reason I would need. You do have a chest strap, which, by the way, the standard Alice strap does not come with, so it is nice to have that chest strap, especially when you're dealing with some extra weight. Maybe not for the medium, but for the large one, I do like having that. Pretty modern buckle systems, which is all appreciated. Up here is another purchase I made. You know what? Just give me this blanket out here. There we go. Back. Next one is the handle here. This is pretty much just a 1-inch webbing with some furniture to keep it on here in the shape of a handle. Simple, yet useful, you know, because there isn't a carry handle on here in comparison to modern rucksacks. You can kind of have it underneath the lip here, but overall it's just nice to have that. On the side here, I've also added a JJ's bum roll to the side. This is great for carrying, you know, objects of that shape, but also I can just stack a couple of airsoft grenades in there if I'm going to an event like that. And I just jerry-rigged it on there. It's just a pouch I had, and it's just something a little extra I can put on there for sustainment. On this side, this is what I was talking about earlier, is I use a Eastern European style e-tool. The reason for that is it is around half the weight of a US GI foldable e-tool, so saving a little bit of weight there. I've also got some duct tape wrapped right here, so I do have some duct tape intermixed with some other stuff that I could use if everything else failed. This is the original Russian, I think it was Russian made e-tool pouch I got for it. And then when you put this in, unlike a foldable American-made e-tool, where it's all conveniently tucked away inside the pouch, you clearly see a large handle sticking out. So this was the pull tab I was talking about on that large Alice rucksack. The same exact one I have here. It's just elastic with a pull tab. I pull it over and just keeps it retained there, so when I walk around, this isn't going all the way out, flapping around without some sort of resistance. Outside of that, quick release buckles, I added alongside a paint job. So paint job, then quick release buckles on 3 sustainment pouches and the 2 main sustainment strap buckles. I have the Velcro on the straps again, Velcro panel plus name tape once again. Going through the sustainment pouches, starting on the rightmost or leftmost, I guess, depending on your perspective. I have a multicam rucksack cover in case the wet weather, which is very common down here in the south. So even something like this, which is fairly water resistant, I still want something extra on there. Also tucked inside is a multicam wet weather top. Again, wet weather is the theme here. Even in the winter months, we can still get a lot of rain because it does not become snow. However, you could get pretty screwed up by hypothermia if you get exposed to it without the proper gear in those months. 2 multicam gaiters. Is it out? Okay, I can't remember. But there's a couple different options you can get out there. But there's just some multicam gaiters. Pretty simple design, but quite good. I do appreciate them. No matter what boots I'm wearing, just something a little extra to keep the morning dew and moisture off of you, or just flat out pouring rain. It's better than nothing. I will say for a tactical gaiter, it is weird that the bottom cords are black cords with neon orange hiding underneath, which easily get cut when you put it underneath the heel of your boot and start walking around. So don't have your heels up to the sky if you're walking around in a situation where you don't want bright colors. Okay. Multicam rain poncho. Pretty sure this was made in China or something like that. I bet this is not NIR compliant. Probably lights up like a Christmas tree at night. But for rain gear, you know, just something to have. And it doesn't smell like freaking dog crap from the surplus glue some of the older US surplus ponchos sometimes have. So that's why I did that. If you notice some paracord on the sides, that's because I wrapped around certain corners, so it's easier to attach to certain points if I'm trying to make a shelter out of it. And an anchor point for some stakes, which are, here are 4 lightweight titanium tent stakes I've added from one of the tents I have, tent shelters. I think it's from the same one I used up in Alaska. Also added some micro paracord just as a grab and pull option on there for them. Pretty lightweight, so it's just 4 of them, but it gives me a minimum if, say, I run out of sticks or there's just nowhere or anything to really help me attach that rain poncho or anything. I got these. Then 10 feet of paracord to also help with the rain poncho shelter and also basic field craft. And then the back sustainment pouch here. Waterproof stuff sack. Inside first Ziploc bag, I have a extra large Baofeng radio battery for the Baofeng radio I usually carry, and a red lens headlamp with duct tape wrapped around one of the straps. So again, some extra duct tape hiding there as well. Here is a battery port. I don't really know too much about these outside. I got one and it works, so I'm satisfied with that. Then some lithium batteries. I got about, what is that, 10 AAAs, 3 CR123, and then 2 AA. And that should be enough for a couple of days of whatever batteries I'll need to use. There's also a little bit more space in that last sustainment pouch, so if I'm doing any sort of content creation, such as for this channel, like GoPro batteries, if I'm at an Airsoft event, I want spare X-Fog batteries, which I do have, there's space in there for me to stuff them. Okay, opening up the front. What you will notice is when I got this one, the internal admin sleeve for the cover was cut out, probably because it was starting to deteriorate. The surplus store just didn't want to deal with it. So I rebuilt that, added a new one, and then on here is that zipper adapter I talked about. So this is just a normal Velcro adapter, but this turns it into a zipper adapter. So a little quieter, a little faster. Opening up, got a protractor and a couple of local maps in my area. This is something I'm definitely lacking in because these maps are pretty decent for what they are, but they are not your standard topographic maps. They're more of like a road map. So that's something to definitely better develop on my end. Rifle cleaning kit, rag, Q-tips, CLP, bore snake. I think I have a couple of swabs in there. No, I don't anymore because I just used the bore snake. I also have a spare bolt, not bolt carrier group, but bolt, firing pin, cam pin, retaining pin in there because I don't carry a spare handgun on my loadout. So if my AR has an issue, I should probably have at least something to try to keep it in the fight if worst case were to happen. So that's why I have that. A couple of trash bags. I try to keep it from that. And then this is sort of a miscellaneous bag. So I got a couple of water purification tablets, a small sewing kit, a mosquito. These two in particular. This is 100% deep bug spray and a head mosquito net. These two are obviously summer only, or when I feel like I'm going to be dealing with the creepy crawlies. But boy, does that help down here in the south. Alongside most of my uniforms being treated with permethrin. Opening this bad boy up, I'm going to go to the main compartment. Large stuff sack. One pair of sock. These are the Darn Tough socks. I have a great appreciation for those for summer and winter. Very good quality ones. Sock pair number 2. Sock pair number 3. Oop. I did have these rolled up. It looks like it came undone. Spare t-shirt. Spare underwear. So this is the silk top. With this being late summer, you never know. So I'm starting to slowly integrate some of my winter weather gear. We will talk more about that later on. And again, silk bottom too. Going into the next stuff sack, this is my food. I do have 2 of these tablets for my hydration sources, so if I don't want to be drinking lukewarm water for that whole time, I do have these. I will say whatever canteen you choose or container you choose, make sure you stick with that one. Because as much as you want flavor out there, once you start refilling that canteen and it just keeps cycling, the old canteen smell mixed with sugary tablets, it's not a great taste. So just designate one of them for that sacrifice. Got several meat sticks here. Looking at 5. No, we got 6. We got 6. 6 meat sticks. I also have 4 on my belt kit, so I can, once those run out, I can fill these up onto that belt kit as well if I want to put them on me instead of the rucksack. Then, 1, 2, 3, 4 MRE meals plus 2 small packs of packaged chicken. So again, this is supposed to be a 2 to 3 day, but that's a pretty calorie deficient amount. This is probably the biggest thing I am lacking if I want to extend it out to that far. But the reason I do is because I really usually don't use the medium one for that length of time. I mean, maybe 2 days, 2.5 days max. So that's what I got. Now, if I use the large Alice rucksack, I'm going to be using it for more. Then, of course, I'm going to be filling this up with more food. Oh, and yes, I did use the MREs and some of the packaged chicken and whatnot because 1, that's what I have, and 2, it saves weight. Like I don't use the heaters or anything, and I don't need jet boil for any of the dehydrated food or the mountain houses. So I just use the MREs. It's fine for me. Some people hate that, but I'm okay with it. I crammed the mess out of this thing to make this fit because sleeping systems are the bane of the medium Alice pack. So, in the dead of summer, I will probably have some other items here. including a full-size bug net. However, right now, again, we're transitioning from the dead of summer into the early fall. So I've removed the bug net with just a BB cover and a summer sleeping bag. I do not use the stuff sack. It's easier to just cram this in what orifices I can in there and make room that way instead of a singular oval-shaped stuff sack that would take up a lot more space in here for me. And that is it for the main compartment. Now, right here on the radio pouch, I don't use it for that. I have a 2-quart canteen right there. Hygiene kit. With that hygiene kit, got a toothbrush and my spork. Take it to the other small towel, some amount of toothpaste, and then baby wipes and toilet paper. And the reason I have both is because in a non-tactical situation, i.e. airsoft game, camping trip, hiking trip, a lot of times, even if it says flushable wipes, the facilities in those areas will not allow you to use baby wipes, at least not put them in the toilet. So it's always good to have the toilet paper as well, because you never know. And then right here is a ice plate. I use this similar to a Camelback bladder, except it will not pop under pressure. That's why I have it hiding in here. And the hose is sticking out to the side, which I can get access to when I'm using it. Okay, so that's everything I currently have in the medium rucksack. However, there are a couple other things I will have depending on the situation. So starting out is during the summer months. There's a couple items in there exclusive for that, such as the bug net, the bug spray, and whatnot. I already mentioned the full-size bug net. What I'll also have is, because the spring, summer, fall, sometimes winter as well, around here in the south, it rains a lot. You'll rarely get snow, but you will get varying temperatures of rain. Now, what I have here is a wet weather bottom. I already told you I keep a wet weather top and the rain poncho on me at all times in that packing list. However, the bottom is a different case. I really have a hate relationship with these things, because when you finally put them on, you're putting them on over all the rest of your stuff from the waist down. I'm wearing belt kit, which means this is an extra layer around my waist I got to take care of. It's bulky, and you just start to sweat underneath, at which point, you know, with the exception maybe your feet, do you want to have the argument of, well, I am dry from the rain, but now I am sweating inside, versus let me just get wet and get nature's bath. That's really for you, depending on the situation. But I will say, during certain parts of the year, it is very cold rain. Again, not snow, but very cold rain, at which point hyperthermia could become a problem. The sun may not be out to dry you out, so this is where something like this would be useful. Another example would be just the constant downpour. We will have days where it feels like 3/4 of a day for multiple days on end will just be raining constantly, at which point you probably won't have time to dry out, so you might just want to suck it up and try to avoid getting wet to begin with. So there's a time and place for these. With that said, I don't really like it, so I will check the weather beforehand and make a decision on that. Another summer item, for the most part, is the boonie. If I'm not wearing a helmet or something, then this is better than nothing, so I have that. Okay, going into winter, spare gloves, fighting gloves, shooting gloves, what do you want to call them. These are just your spare pilot and engineering gloves, I think that's what we called it in the world of surplus. Very cheap, very simple. I like them. What's great, why I don't carry this in the summertime usually is I already have one in my cargo pocket. And in the summertime, I mean, there's a 50-50 chance I don't even use the gloves just because it's so hot out. But if you're ever in a situation where you need gloves, I still have those. If I lose them while I'm out there, tough luck. Wintertime, that's a little less of an option. If you lose them and you don't have any sort of finger protection, you risk hypothermia, so I do keep a spare in the wintertime. In addition, if it's cold enough, I will keep a pair of running gloves. Now, these running gloves are very thin, and they absolutely suck with friction. So if you're ever manipulating a firearm, these are awful by themselves. But what you can do is you can put one on, and then you can get your very well frictioned leather gloves here. And now you can manipulate your firearm a little easier. and that gives you that extra layer. And then, as I mentioned in my belt kit review for the winter time, I will also have a hand warmer on me. The hand warmer stuff pouch by Eagle Industries. So all that together would usually handle most of my cold weather needs around here. If I'm up in the mountains under very extreme conditions, there's snow on the ground, I do have some Arctic mittens I still keep, but it's so rare that I don't really think about it too much. Fleece cap, because wintertime, and thus would replace the boonie if I have one of these. I already mentioned the silks. Here's the waffles, waffle top, waffle bottom. And then, of course, depending on the weather conditions for my sleeping systems, I already showed you some. So for my sleeping system, I have the full-size bug net, a whoopee, baby cover, then summer sleeping bag, and then winter sleeping bag. So those are kind of the 5 or so components I have for my sleeping system. And then depending on the time of year and the weather I think I'm going to be dealing with, I will mix and match those. So in the dead of summer, I will probably keep the bivy cover as a form of something to keep me off the ground, and some basic waterproofing if I'm dealing with wet weather. I can slip underneath it if it's cool enough. If not, it's going to be a sweaty experience. Then I will have the whoopee, and I have the Marine Corps whoopee, so you can, unlike the Army when it has snaps, you can kind of turn it into a pseudo sleeping bag, which is pretty convenient. And I'll use that, and then I'll have like the bug net over me. And then the dead of the winter, the coldest parts, I will get rid of most of that and just use the bivy cover with the summer and winter bag combined, or something like that, right? And of course, the sleeping system in particular is probably the bulkiest system I have. Then some additional weight I will need is food, depending on how far I'm going, which will determine if I move from the small and medium Alice rucksack to the larger one. So yeah, that's what I got. That's a little more down and dirty of a video. Tell me guys what you think. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys on next time. Bye.